the Maasai people of Kenya and Tanzania, and they ask, how are the children? And of course, the Hope Corps response is, the children are well. Excellent, nice job. If someone asked you that question, beloved, how might you respond? It's not rhetorical, you can answer. How would you respond, Jim?
Some children are better than others.
Some children are better than others, unfortunately. Right. And Jim, you're not just talking about little children, are you? You're talking about all of us as God's children, right? I think that's an important thing to point out, is when we think children, we often think small children. But one of the things that we try to do, or I try to do, at least here at Christ Church, is to call you all beloved children of God. We're all God's children, not just the smallest ones of us. All right, so how else would you answer?
Tolerable.
Tolerable. Okay, some of God's children are tolerable. How else?
Just fine.
Just fine, thank you. Nice answer. How else would you answer?
Loved by God.
Loved by God, thank you. The question, and the next question is, how do we welcome, support, embrace children and families? All families in the life of our church. I mentioned to you once or twice that I've gotten some compliments. People will come up to me and say, oh, Pastor Cindy, I love what you do with the kids every morning. And I appreciate that, I do. But I also want to remind you that we're all responsible for taking care of the children in this church, not just me, but all of us. And not just the littlest children, but each other too. How you treat each other shows how you would treat Jesus the Christ. And that's what our reading is all about this morning. It's all about community. And that's what I love about Jesus, is that this reading from Mark's Gospel today, you might think it's about divorce, but it's really about so much more than divorce. It's about being together in community. And I hope to be able to illustrate that to you a little bit better. But our reading this morning comes to us from Mark's Gospel. We're working our way through. Right now we're on the 10th chapter, and we're going to be looking at verses 2 through 16. Jesus has just come from Capernaum, and he's back down in Judea and Jerusalem. Remember I said he's heading towards the cross. And some Pharisees come up to Jesus because they want to trap him. And so they ask him this question. They say, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife? And Jesus says to them, you know the answer to that question. You know that Moses permitted a man to divorce his wife. The Pharisees thought for a minute. And then Jesus goes on to say that God brings a man and a woman together. That is what God intended for men and women. A man will leave his wife, or leave his mother and his father and be joined together with his wife. And those whom God has joined together, let no one separate. Well, a little bit later, when they're in a room, Jesus' disciples ask him a little bit more about this. And Jesus goes on to say that a woman who divorces her husband and marries another is an adulteress. And a man who divorces his wife and marries another is an adulterer. And then a little while later, some parents were bringing their children to Jesus so that Jesus could lay his hands on them and bless them. And the disciples came over and they scolded those parents and they said, can't you see he's too busy for you? Take your children away. And Jesus got angry with his disciples and he said, stop right now. These children are to come to me because whoever welcomes these children welcomes me. If you can't welcome the children into the kingdom of heaven, then you yourself will not be welcome. And he put his hands on them, and he blessed them. Amen.